What if the dress that almost got a seamstress fired ended up turning her into the next big name in fashion? Imagine this: a young woman in a modest workshop, working in silence, pouring her soul into every stitch, only to have her design stolen by someone she trusted. When the wrong dress is chosen, it leads to a shocking accident during a high-profile fitting. The truth explodes in front of an entire design house. But no one expected that a single needle, forgotten in haste, would unravel lies, expose betrayal, and change the life of the most overlooked talent in the room. This isn't just a story about fashion, it's about dignity, justice, and a love that grew between threads. Just when you think you figured it all out, everything shifts. The hum of the sewing machine was the only sound in the workshop, broken only by the occasional sigh from Sophie Bennett. Her fingers moved with precision over a bolt of navy blue silk, stitching the delicate embroidery her grandmother had taught her. It was the kind of stitch that whispered of old-world craftsmanship. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows, and somewhere in the back room, a radio murmured the end of a pop song. Sophie had no idea her world was about to change. 27, Sophie was quiet but brilliant with her hands. While others chased trends, she stitched stories into her work. She never expected recognition. Just another face in the back room at Aldridge Tailoring, a prestigious atelier tucked away in downtown Chicago. Then he walked in. Nathan Carter, CEO of Carter Group and heir to a textile empire, didn't belong there. He was a Forbes kind of man, tall, tailored, and magnetic. And yet there he stood in their doorway, in a suit that cost more than their salaries combined. The room froze. Sophie looked up, brushing a curl from her cheek as Nathan addressed the stunned manager. He was there about a commission, something for his mother's 60th birthday. "She's difficult to impress," he said. Whispers rippled through the studio. Sophie's heart pounded, not from awe, but because for once she had something to prove. Nathan, ever the strategist, made things interesting. 2 designers, 2 gowns, no names. He would choose the better dress blindly. The winner would be featured in the Carter Group's Spring Gala catalog, a career-changing opportunity. Sophie accepted with quiet resolve. Vanessa Blake did not. Vanessa, another seamstress, always believed herself superior. Her work was technically fine, but it lacked the soul Sophie infused into her pieces. Vanessa had charm and ambition, and she wasn't above using them. Over the next week, the 2 women worked tirelessly. Sophie's gown, midnight silk with silver vine embroidery, was inspired by the wild lavender her grandmother grew. Each stitch told a story. Vanessa, meanwhile, spent more time schmoozing than sewing. But she had a plan. The night before the presentation, Sophie left her dress covered on its mannequin near her station. When she returned from the restroom, everything seemed untouched. But in the quiet of night, Vanessa had made her move. She switched the labels. The dress Sophie had poured her soul into now bore Vanessa's name. The next morning, Nathan arrived with his assistant. The 2 gowns were presented anonymously. One was safe and predictable, Vanessa's real creation. The other, Sophie's stolen masterpiece, radiated something deeper. Nathan studied them both, silent for long seconds. Then, with certainty, he chose Sophie's work. "This one," he said, tracing the embroidery. "It has heart." Sophie's breath caught as Vanessa beamed in victory. That evening at the Carter estate, Nathan's mother tried on the chosen gown. Guests whispered in admiration, until she screamed. A sewing needle, long and thin, had been left in the seam. Blood spotted the fabric. Chaos erupted. Nathan's expression turned dark. "How could this happen?" he demanded. "You let my mother get stabbed in one of your dresses." The studio was mortified. Vanessa, pale and panicked, immediately deflected. "It wasn't mine," she cried. "It must have been Sophie's." Sophie, stunned, stepped forward. "That's not true. That's my mark." She turned the dress inside out, revealing a hidden signature thread, her trademark. This is my gown, but it's not how I left it. The room fell silent, truth unraveled, stitch by stitch. Nathan's gaze shifted, not with anger, but curiosity. Why would someone like Sophie sabotage her own work? And why would someone else go so far as to claim it? What would you do if everything you worked for was stolen and used against you? Should Sophie expose Vanessa or walk away from the studio that failed her? Back at Aldridge Tailoring, the fallout came fast. The manager, red-faced, gathered everyone. Sophie stood quietly while Vanessa wiped fake tears from her eyes. I had no idea the dress was faulty, Vanessa said with theatrical sorrow. If Sophie says it's hers, maybe she's blaming me for her mistake. Sophie opened her mouth, but no one really listened. Not the manager, who always preferred Vanessa's charm. Not the staff, afraid to get involved. She should have shouted, walked away, but instead she said, I never leave pins in my seams. Someone tampered with it. The manager narrowed his eyes. And you expect us to believe Vanessa would sabotage a client like Mrs. Carter? Sophie's voice trembled. I'm saying the tags were switched. That earned her eye rolls. Vanessa gasped, offended. You think I'd sneak around and do that? Why? Sophie turned to the others. Because you saw me working on that gown for days. You knew it was better than yours. The manager slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Sophie, take some time off. We'll check the security footage. But it was already too late. The Carter Group's legal team had contacted the studio. Mrs. Carter was fine, shaken, but not seriously injured. Still, there would be an investigation. That night, Sophie sat at her sewing table, paralyzed. The hands that once stitched dreams now felt useless. She remembered the moment Nathan chose her gown, not knowing it was hers, but still feeling its soul. That spark was real, and now it was being used to ruin her. A knock at the door. A courier handed her a sleek envelope. Delivery for Sophie Bennett, from the Carter Group. Her heart skipped. Inside was a handwritten note on crisp, embossed paper. Sophie, I need to speak with you. Nathan Carter. A phone number was scrawled beneath. She dialed before she could overthink. He answered on the second ring. Bennett, he said, like he'd been waiting. I got your note, she said. Why do you want to talk to me? I've been thinking about that dress, he replied. I've worked with textiles all my life. That embroidery, the structure, it had soul. She didn't speak. I saw how the studio treated you, he continued. I watched the security footage. Your dress was on the left mannequin when you left. The one that was presented to me was on the right. Her breath caught. You mean, you know it was switched? Yes, and I believe Vanessa did it. She closed her eyes, relief washing over her. Thank you, she whispered. No one else would listen. I'm not here to make you feel better, he said, his voice sharper now. I want to know why someone like you is wasting away in a place like Aldridge Tailoring. That place gave me my start, she said, defensive. Now they're letting someone else wear your name. There was silence between them, heavy and pulsing with unfinished thoughts. I have a proposal, Nathan finally said. Come to my office tomorrow. Let's talk about your future. Your real future. The next morning, Sophie stood in the soaring glass lobby of Carter Group's headquarters, holding her portfolio and shaking hands. It was the same place she'd once dreamed of having her work displayed, just not under these circumstances. Nathan greeted her with a nod and ushered her into his corner office. It overlooked the city, all steel and skyline. I'm putting together a capsule collection, he explained. Something different, authentic. I want your style, your story, at the center of it. Sophie blinked. Why me? Because while the world runs after luxury and speed, Nathan said, you still care about craftsmanship. That's rare, and rare things are worth protecting. She wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a test. And what happens to Vanessa? Nathan's jaw tightened. She's been suspended pending investigation. But that's not your concern anymore. Sophie looked out the window, trying to calm the war inside her chest. The offer was everything she'd ever dreamed of. But could she trust it? "I'll think about it," she said softly. "No," Nathan said. "Don't think. Create. Start fresh, this time with your name on the label." As she left the building, Sophie felt a spark in her chest, faint but growing. For the first time in weeks, she wanted to sew again. Not for a paycheck, not for someone else's approval, but because her story still deserved to be told. And she was going to tell it, thread by thread. If you were Sophie, would you take Nathan's offer and risk everything for a second chance? Have you ever had your work stolen or your name erased? The buzz inside Carter Group's design floor was unlike anything Sophie Bennett had ever experienced. Clean lines, endless fabric samples, voices speaking in a symphony of ambition and nerves. And yet among it all, she stood still, watching the label with her own name slowly etched onto a wooden design board in Nathan Carter's private studio. Just weeks ago, she'd been accused of sabotage, nearly fired, and forced into silence, while someone else stole the spotlight that rightfully belonged to her. But now she was no longer a shadow behind a curtain. She was the center of the room. Nathan kept his promise. The capsule collection would carry Sophie's name, her aesthetic, her craftsmanship. No compromises. He offered her full creative control under Carter Group's banner, and to Sophie's surprise, he meant it. Even more surprising was the way he looked at her. Not like a corporate investment, but like someone who saw her for exactly who she was, and believed in it. But peace was a temporary guest. One morning, as Sophie reviewed fabric swatches, for the final lineup, Vanessa Blake stormed into the office. Her lips were redder than ever, but her pride looked badly bruised. "You think you've won, don't you?" Vanessa hissed. Sophie didn't flinch. "I didn't win anything. I just stopped, letting you take what wasn't yours." Vanessa laughed coldly. "You think this little spotlight will last? Nathan only picked you because you're his charity case of the month. You're just quaint. A novelty." Sophie calmly placed the fabric down and turned to her. "And yet here I am. Not because I played dirty, not because I smiled the loudest, but because my work spoke louder than your lies." Vanessa's face twisted into a sneer. But before she could fire back, Nathan stepped into the room. "Vanessa," he said coolly, "HR will handle your remaining paperwork. You no longer have access to this floor. Goodbye." Vanessa's mouth dropped open. "You're letting her—" "I'm letting justice do what it should have done weeks ago." She stood frozen for a moment, then spun on her heels and left. No last word. No tears. Just silence and the echo of her heels clacking down the marble hall. When the door shut, Nathan turned to Sophie. "Sorry about that. I should have stopped her sooner." "You did it when it mattered," she said. "That's enough." Launch day arrived with the electric pressure of a storm about to break. Carter Group had turned its top floor into an intimate fashion showcase for press, influencers, and retail partners. Sophie's collection, titled Revive, was draped on models that glided across the floor with elegance, each piece adorned with her signature embroidery and storytelling in every thread. And they loved it. The guests, the critics, even the Carter board members whispered with praise. They marveled at how each garment felt like a personal memory, stitched and layered with authenticity, not trend. Sophie watched from the side, heart pounding like a drum. Then the moment came. Nathan stepped onto the small stage and took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, eyes scanning the room before settling on her, "what you've witnessed today isn't just another seasonal line. It's a revival of something the industry forgot: heart, honesty, and heritage. Sophie Bennett reminded me what fashion looks like when it remembers where it came from, and I hope she reminds all of you too." Thunderous applause followed. Sophie was ushered forward, almost shaking, as she joined Nathan at center stage. The light was blinding, but the warmth, it was real. Afterward, she found herself outside on the terrace, city lights sparkling like distant stars. Nathan joined her, 2 champagne glasses in hand. "To the girl who turned stitches into stories," he said. She smiled, soft and full of disbelief. "To the man who actually listened." They clinked glasses. "You know," he added, "the board wants to expand your line, and I want to back it, personally." Sophie blinked. "You're serious?" "Deadly. But what about you?" she asked. "You've spent years building this empire. Why risk it for someone like me?" Nathan stepped closer. "Because someone like you reminded me why I started in the first place. And because every time you walk into a room, Sophie, I remember what it feels like to believe in something bigger than profit." Her breath hitched. There was a long pause. No rush, no expectations. Just 2 people quietly realizing what had been building between them. Trust, respect, and something deeper. She looked up at him. "I don't want to be someone's project, Nathan. I want to be an equal." He leaned in slightly. "Then be my partner. In the brand. In this life. However you want it." Sophie's fingers curled around the railing. Her voice was steady. "We'll take it 1 season at a time." He laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "Fair enough." A few weeks later, the Sophie Bennett collection was the talk of the industry. Orders poured in. Magazines requested interviews. And for the first time, the girl from the back room had a name people remembered. More importantly, she remembered herself. Viewers, how did this story make you feel? Were you rooting for Sophie the whole way? Do you think justice was served in the end? If you loved watching her journey, drop it in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. We want to hear your stories too. And don't forget to share this video with a friend who believes that honesty and talent always rise.